Welcome to Managing Love Intelligently. I'm Jason.
And I'm Stephen Ing.
And Steve is a licensed marriage and family therapist with over 30 years experience. And I'm a real live human, even though I sometimes sound like a robot. Today's topic is gender roles in relationships. And before we kick off the conversation, if you have a question for Steve, visit stevening.com and fill out the contact form. At the end of each episode, Steve will answer a listener question, so stay tuned for that. So earlier this week, Steve sent me an article titled, "Some Dating Coaches Online Are Pushing Women to Seek More Traditional Gender Roles." A really long title. That's how they're making them nowadays, it seems.
Do you remember where that was published?
That was... No, I don't. I have it somewhere, but it was, I could find it quickly though, but that was the title. It was written by a woman named Angela Yang. And, yeah, let me look really quick to see where that was.
I think that was, it was either WAPO or New York Times. And I'm pretty sure, well, now that I think about it, I do read a lot of other things too. So
let's see. I'll find it in 1 second here. NBC News. Does that sound
possible? Well, we've already given attribution, so who cares?
NBC News. That's what it picked up. But anyways, that is the title of the article, and I want to start by just reading the opening sentence of that article.
Sure.
And then we'll just kind of kick it off from there. And again, this is a topic about gender roles in relationships. So the article begins by saying, dating coach Carla Elia, E-L-I-A, tells women not to go out with a man who is, in quotes, nice, or who, in quotes, treats you right, but one who can't afford them.
One who can't afford them.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the guy for you, baby.
So, I mean, in terms of managing love intelligently, I guess I wrote a bunch of notes. I have the article printed and I have a bunch of different things they go over. But I mean, just as far as that first line goes, it seems like it's the complete opposite of everything that a lot of stuff that we talk about on this podcast.
Yeah. And yet it, in my experience as a therapist, her viewpoint and the viewpoint of a lot of the other internet influencers who are self-anointed relationship coaches, they dovetail very nicely with my incel clients who think women are only gold diggers and that's all they're interested in is men who have a lot of money, and that they, as being the guys that they are, have no chance whatsoever of ever having a successful romance because of that.
Yeah. So what do you think about the fact of somebody like telling somebody, like, isn't it about you want someone who's nice and somebody who does treat you right? And like when we talk about equality and like, can you even have, like, in your experience, can you have a successful romance where that stuff is just not there, but it's just about the money? Like, have you seen...
I mean, it's okay. So I'm very hesitant to, as usual, I always get nervous with these podcasts because I'm never sure, if I'm going to overstate something or go out on a crazy rant of my own moralizing. But frankly, just taking the gloves off, I'm horrified by this kind of thinking. And yet I welcome it in the sense that, I really think, as I've explained to my clients, there are men and women out there who can be divided into two groups, which sounds like a horrible binary model. But if you bear with me for a minute, I think I can explain. There are people who are into people and people who are into stuff. Mm-hmm. And the people who are into stuff tend to have transactional relationships and they want more. For him, maybe he wants more sex, more positions, more delightful lingerie, and that's pretty much all he wants from her. And if she could just shut up more, I suppose. And then and from the woman's side, it's just more money. And I ask my clients, well, let's assume there are such women, because I think there are, and assume that there are such men, I would say to my female clients. Mm-hmm. So is that what you're looking to build?
Yeah.
Is that the kind of relationship you want? Because if that's really what you buy into and you treat the universe from that position in your philosophy of life, those are the people you are going to be running into. And it's not a mysterious, mystical property of, just believing something into existence, but you're going to automatically be turning off those people who think the other way as you converse with them. And then when you finally start finding the others, it's like we speak the same language, and so we're sticking together. Mm-hmm. So people who are transactional tend to stick together. And again, I would ask, is that what you're looking for? Now, for some people, that is in fact what they're looking for. There are men who don't appreciate women as, well, humans. And there are women who don't appreciate men really from the same perspective. They're just simply a walking wallet or a means to an end. But is that really the kind of woman I as a man would want in my life? And the answer would be categorically no. Mm-hmm. So if I don't want that, then I have to really let go of that whatever that number is, whether it's a vast number. And I think it's certainly on the planet, it's got to be a large number of women. And if I'm a woman, I would want to let go of the men who are looking for that, because I think for most of us, the whole idea of being in a relationship is the end of loneliness. That's the goal. Mm-hmm. It's not to be able to buy more stuff.
And that's based off, to get to that end of loneliness, it's based off equality. It's not.
I don't see how you can have it any other way. I mean, I love my dogs, but there's a limit to the companionship they have to offer. Mm-hmm. They're not really my equals in that sense, intellectually. Mm-hmm. And I think the same is true of marrying someone who's an employee and who's always been an employee and continues to be an employee. I mean, they're in a somewhat underdog position in the relationship. And likewise, somebody who's your superior at work, or who always acts like your superior at home, who is always above you, the top dog looking down. I think and the genders really are irrelevant, I think, in that, because it can go either way. And so when we think about gender roles, what part of the discussion in that article and why I sent it to you was the rigidity of the beliefs about what men are for. Mm. Men are supposed to be doing this.
Yeah.
And and what's funny about that is there is a kernel of truth in the idea that men and women are different. In broad brushstrokes, we could say that. I think the differences are often much less than the differences between any two people in the same gender. But as a general rule, I think men tend to, unlike women, tend to take less satisfaction in relationships and more satisfaction in their accomplishments. Mm. And they identify more with their accomplishments. And I've explained to others that it's not that women can't mow the front lawn because they can. Mm-hmm. The difference, I think, with men is that they stand back at the lawn and then they take such satisfaction in the job they did. They're really thinking about it. Oh yeah, I got to trim that little bit I missed. Mm-hmm. And it's a much bigger deal to men than I think it is to the typical woman. And on the other side, I think women are much better at relationships in general. They're more attentive to the subtle nuances and details of relationships. And it's not that men can't learn those things or can't participate in good relationships, but I think it's never the idea that when the women get up and leave and then the men turn to each other and say, oh, good, now we can talk about relationships. Mm-hmm. That's a sentence that's never been said in the history of Earth. Men do not do that. So, and the so-called, chick flicks or guy movies that emphasize daring deeds for the men, lots of machine guns, usually lots of gratuitous violence.
Yeah.
Or for women, relationship movies where lots of talking heads, people leaning into the camera, a tear in the eye, and all of that. And the halfway mark, or the compromise on a date, of course, is the the comedy, the rom-com.
Mm-hmm.
And the rom-com kind of hits that sweet spot where there's something for the guys and something for the women, and hopefully we end up somewhere close to each other by the end of the movie. But those kinds of experiences are typically, I mean, what guy watches a rom-com by himself? That doesn't usually happen too much.
I've done that.
Poor thing.
I watched When Harry Met Sally, which is a classic.
It's a classic.
And I watched
yes.
it after my last girlfriend broke up with me. It was a bad idea.
I was going to say, did you cry?
Yeah, it's not good. I was like, why am I doing this?
Right. It's like when I broke up with one girlfriend, I was like listening to sad records over and over and over. And it was just, so when we think about gender roles, I think there are gender roles that are actually kind of wonderful, and I maybe have shared this example with you before, but when a little girl is climbing a tree outside her family's home in the front yard, and mom is looking up, typically saying, "Oh, be careful. Don't you fall. You've gone too high. I think you should come down now." And she's very concerned about her daughter's safety or her son's safety. Whereas the dad is typically focused on coaching and coaching the next accomplishment. Okay, now lift your left leg. Yeah, to the next branch. Yeah. Okay, now stand on that and you can reach the next one. And I ask myself, what kind of parent does a child need? And I think there's only one answer, and that's both. Children need both kinds of parents. I think dads would not be particularly helpful for infants and toddlers. And I think dads are super parents when it comes to working with older children and helping them grow, because the rule is sort of that women are afraid their babies will suffer any pain, whereas men seem to have an acceptance of the idea that in this world, pain is inevitable and it must be overcome in order to be successful. So, yeah, I want both of those parents.
Yeah.
I don't think most of us got both, but I would have liked to have had both.
What do you think about just gender roles in general? Like, do you know the history of when they became first established? Like, for me, it seems like the 50s was when that sort of kind of the man's the provider, the woman is stay at home, take care of the kids, that sort of thing.
Well,
because it seems kind of a call to that sort of era. And then then you get into the feminism movement, and what sort of rights do women have, or autonomy do they have when they're in those situations? So,
well, my clients in general, like who are incels and misogynistic, they point back to a much earlier date, and they would go back to the
caveman, hit him on the head and drag him away with the
well, they would be going back to not just Neolithic times, but early history before Neolithic times, where we were hunter-gatherers. That's 99% of human history.
Well, let me give you a thing really quick on that.
Okay.
As far as hunter-gatherers, one of this on this article, it says this woman, her name is Abigail Siu, S-I-U. She says in the article that men are natural born hunters who want to conquer them. That's why women shouldn't be too easy to chase, she said, or accept lower dates like getting coffee. So,
well, she said women should not accept lower dates like getting coffee.
Yeah, but
right.
Men should be kind of wanting to conquer the woman.
Yeah,
so they're
and
kind
working for it. Yeah.
So like you said earlier, like the incels go back to there, and it sounds like they're mirroring that in a way.
In a weird sort of way, but I think they're both two ends of the same pathology, where each fails to see the humanity of the other.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
that's a good way of putting it.
So for me, if you do, I just read so much on human history and evolution, because I'm trying to get a book together on talking about human sexual development. But I think it's pretty clear from our history that, men were hunters and women were more emphasizing the role of gathering food, like plant life or smaller animals that they could eat along with their children. And it makes sense to me that that's what was going on. One thing I learned recently, though, is that in terms of the total calories of a given day, the men would be providing on average something like 30% of those calories, and the women would be providing 70%. So then, as now, women can take some satisfaction, and they're still working and have always worked harder than men, or at least more productively. But
how were women providing 70 calories? Like
70%.
70%.
Oh, by gathering
like fruits or vegetables and stuff?
Absolutely. Okay. Yeah. Fruits, vegetables, and even small game, like small mammals like rodents and that kind of thing. So checking traps and that. So there's no, I think if we go back in history, it's really, there's obviously a difference in the roles, and the roles had certain advantages, and I think both were necessary and both were good. But whether we like it or not, that is our history. Mm-hmm. And we've evolved in conformity with that history. We've changed, and our changes have led even further changes down the road from an evolutionary point of view. So, but I don't think that translates so much into romance in the sense of I must conquer her.
Because there's a lot of guys who think that. There's like a movement even with some of the, like Andrew Tate, for instance. Like he's do you know about that guy?
Well, I'm hoping the audience is hissing, as they hear his name.
Oh,
yeah, sure. Andrew Tate is the famous misogynist. I think he's in his late 30s now, and he's currently under arrest for charges related to some sort of misbegotten sexual escapades. He's been in and out of custody, and I think it was Romania for trafficking, sex trafficking, and he and his brother. And I think he's probably, historically at least, a pretty good martial artist.
Yeah, I believe he's a kickboxer,
but probably not a great thinker. So for me, Andrew Tate would not be someone whose philosophy of life I would want to be following in terms of building a relationship that has the chance of enduring over a lifetime. But nevertheless, I do think there are gender roles and gender roles that kind of make sense. But again, as I said earlier, there's so much diversity that some of these roles are rather unpredictable, like a traditional role from that golden era you were mentioning, the 50s, would be that the man would be in charge of the family money, and that he would be monitoring the bank account. But in a marriage like my own, I would say my wife is far superior to myself on managing money and paying attention to the sorts of fiscal details that need to be paid attention to, especially in these ages of internet scams and bank fraud. So I don't even trust myself to take her place. I would have to probably reduce everything to just cash on hand if she weren't around. And in a similar way, I am the guy who, if anybody was going to mow the lawn, I'd be that guy who would do that and take pleasure in it, because I do the gardening, whereas she prefers to sit in a chair with a glass, preferably with an umbrella in it and a little ice, watching me, because she too enjoys the garden, but we're enjoying it from a very different perspective. I think humans err when they get rigid about gender roles or any other role.
Yeah.
And when we stay flexible and adaptive, we do much better. So it's really not too helpful to think about these roles being really rigid. My wife and I have talked, for example, about, well, what if she was the one who was making the big money and I was the one who wasn't? Well, I probably, if somebody had to give up their career, it would be the one not making much money. That would be me in that scenario.
Would you do that?
Oh, in a heartbeat. If my wife came into her millions by modeling or acting in Hollywood, or she had a book that took off, or a podcast that people listen to, then I would be delighted to fade into the background. I would be delighted to do so many of the other things that she routinely does in life that keep our home going. So I'm pretty easygoing about that. I think what makes me happy is having a great relationship.
Hmm.
I don't care if I'm washing the dishes or drying the dishes. I don't care if I'm doing the dishes or doing the cooking. I don't care if I'm doing the domestic work or I'm going to the office. It's all work, and it's all something we do for our family.
Yeah. Do you come up against that a lot in therapy with men who don't want, or where that's something that they're struggling with, where they want to be the providers and they want to be the one making the most money? And
I think the capacity for men to adapt is grossly underestimated. I think men are capable of a great deal of adaptation, and it's only in the abstract that we find ourselves kind of getting rigid about, well, my career matters to me and I would always want to work. But when I start posing thoughtful thought experiments like, well, let's imagine you finally found your life partner, and she's not just great in the bedroom, but she's great in your life. She's somebody you really love and care about. You enjoy her company. But she's been offered a job traveling around the world making $10 million a year. Mm-hmm. Do you think you'd be willing to go along with her, as long as it was first class, of course? And every guy I've ever talked to has said, well, yeah, of course, I would be glad to do that. Now, I'm sure there are some other people like Andrew Tate who would be utterly undone by that, because if he's not in control, what does he have? And as for the women who are refusing to go on coffee dates because that's too low budget, really at the end of the day, you have to admit to yourself, well, she's really not that interested in getting to know me. Mm-hmm. She's really not even attracted to me. She's attracted to the possibility of a giant payday someday in the future. Mm-hmm. So is that the kind of woman any guy longs to be with, or is that the kind of woman that any woman longs to be? And if so, I would recommend the men and women who like that kind of thing to go for it. I think it'll be profoundly unfulfilling and unsatisfying over time, but some people have to learn the hard way.
What do you think? What do you think the sort of, or what do you think about people online, I guess, giving advice like this that aren't therapists?
Oh, honestly,
do you think that it's like real, like really, do you think it's like something that's damaging? And do you think that
I think it's totally legit and it's for the best. I say that because I think of them as, the marketing influence you want. You want more people creating more misery as much as possible if you're in the therapy business. And in the same way, I just think it's great that people are putting their opinions out there, regardless of whether they make sense or expose the speaker as an unfeeling monster who has no regard for humanity. I think it's great.
So even if it is whatever it may be, and
as sick as it could possibly be, yeah.
Well, so you're you believe in the First Amendment.
Yeah, I mean, I really do, and I think that sadly, okay, and this is something that both men and women do, but I think it's unfortunate that people who know better often think they need to counter the argument with some sort of finger-wagging moralizing. Mm. And that's unfortunate because it comes across as finger-wagging moralizing. Mm-hmm. And instead of a real argument, like, again, it's back to what are you trying to build? Would you like to have intimacy with someone who respects you as a human being? If you want that, then you don't want Andrew Tate, and you don't want the woman who's espousing a gold-digging lifestyle.
Yeah. So it comes down to what you want as an individual. And right. It's nice to have options. That's the point of we have.
I don't know if it's nice to have those options. I mean, it's nice to get to the end of one's own foolishness. Yeah. And I don't know if there is a way to do that without serious pain. I mean,
but what if you have that Sec 2 classes, like you said earlier, and you do have the woman who just loves the stuff. She just lives for the new coat, the new purse, the fancy dinners, and it's like that.
Don't stop there. There's the cars, the houses, the jets, everything. Yeah. So, yeah, I guess, though, at the end of a life spent pursuing that sort of materialism, I just can't. I've known people who've done that, and and their faces reflect the emptiness that they feel inside.
Jeez.
It's
Yeah.
true. I mean, whereas I think we all know simple people who don't need a whole lot of things to be happy. And by the time they're middle-aged, as the old saying goes, you're born with the face that you're born with, but by middle age, you have the face that you deserve. And those individuals look happy, and you can see it in their face, and they feel loved, and they radiate that to those around them. And so, I'm not entirely joking. I guess I'm being a little bit harsh on the people who are not seeing humanity. But again, the ultimate, most important thing in this human experience is humanity. So if we're missing that and we're trading all that away for more baubles, more toys in the garage, or more jewelry on the nightstand, I think people then miss out. Now it's hard, okay, because when we're wrong, it's really hard to admit that. And the kind of rational thinking that I hope you and I are engaging in most of the time is based actually not so much on a cognitive process. It is based on a cognitive process where, we hope that we're rational and that we're perceiving what is irrational, and we know how to remedy irrational beliefs and to grow beyond them. But that is an impossible process until one has embraced the idea that one could be wrong at any given time about one's most closely held beliefs. And that requires humility.
Yeah.
And I haven't seen any humility from that other side, whether it's Andrew Tate or the writers, the influencers who were talked about in that article. But again, because it's hard to admit one's been wrong. It's hard to make that U-turn and go back all the miles that you've come in your life.
Yeah. And why is that so hard for people to admit that they're wrong? Is that just more control stuff?
Well, I think it is related to control, because I think it means that you're out of control and you got it so very wrong. And that's frightening. I think it's very frightening to think that one does not understand reality. And if we don't understand our humanity, then we don't understand the reality we live in. So human beings our children may be impressed temporarily by the Disneyland dad who throws more stuff at them or gives them more money. At the end of a childhood stepping into adulthood, are they grateful for that parent? Are they close to that parent? Do they have the kind of successful, intimate fellowship with that parent that takes them into old age? No. No, because their utility was all about giving stuff.
Yeah.
So if that's all that it was, and I'm not saying anything here against those wonderful parents who do exist, and they are out there, who have the blessing of wealth, and they're generous and they share their wealth with their children. But the wealth without the love and the respect for each other's humanity, the wealth by itself is utterly unhelpful in terms of establishing a good relationship.
You said you've met people like that who live a life of materialism and then they come out of it and they're just, you can see in their faces. Have you had clients like that?
Well, I think it's less my clients. I have had clients like that, but rarely, because these are the kind of individuals I'm talking about are not individuals who are typically troubled by any self-doubt or any emotional pain. I don't see Andrew Tate ever coming to a therapy session. Yeah. I don't see these women who are gold diggers and proud of it ever going to a therapy session unless it offered an opportunity for them to even be more manipulative, with their prospect. So
is it a personality disorder?
Well, possibly, but it's at the very least, it's a number of irrational beliefs, and chief among them is the utter ignorance of the importance of love, because what they set up is so transactional that in no way could it be called love.
Yeah.
So imagine a human being or at least something that looks like a human being, a human-shaped object who lacks the capacity for love, we would typically refer to such a person as inhuman. And they're not really what the rest of us are looking for. So, yeah, if you're an incel who hates women, you're going to read an article like the one you're quoting from, and it's going to confirm every prejudice you've ever had. And that's glorious, because self-doubt is something he doesn't want either. He has enough fear in his life and enough insecurity. He doesn't want to question his knowledge of the world. And for the woman who finds out about the Andrew Tates of this world and thinks that's all men are into, it's also very confirming. And unfortunately, though, both individuals are wrong. The mere fact that such types of people exist doesn't mean that that's what all men are like or all women are like.
Yeah. So this woman, so referring back to the article, Cecile Simmons, it says Cecile Simmons, a researcher studying what she describes as anti-feminist influencers, said she doesn't see the rise in this type of content as that surprising. She said it may be a reaction to ideas commonly shared in the manosphere, a network of online spaces where men often talk about women in terms of sexual market value and trade tips on how to become a high value man or alpha male. So kind of like everything we're talking about. So it's kind of like
so the alpha male thinkers have actually been the influencers for this group of women.
Like that's what I was thinking before I even got to that point. I was like, it seems like it's some sort of reaction. And it seems like when that happens is in society, they're so upset with what somebody else is saying, and then they react. And then if that's being led by emotions, and then it becomes just as ridiculous, if not more ridiculous than, you know what I'm saying? Like it just like,
well, I would characterize it. My emotional reaction is one of horror. And I'm utterly put off by this. It's so contemptible. But that's a reaction. I think what I see from these female influencers who are encouraging women to become more like gold diggers, I see it more as a wholesale sellout of women as human beings. And that's not the kind of woman I would want parenting my children. Certainly not my male children, and for that matter, not even my daughters. I wouldn't want her anywhere near my children in terms of influencing them. So, because I think our strong suit as a species, and it may not seem strong, but I think there are many reasons to think it's our strong suit, is our ability to love, our ability to engage in truly altruistic behavior. That's what binds the human species together into communities, societies, and organizations that help us ultimately overcome and be more successful facing life's challenges.
Says who?
Says me.
Well, where do you get your information from?
Yeah, right. Have you done the research? Well, think about it this way. When you think about your own life, you're a highly educated guy who's been to college and grad school. And how many people did it take to make that happen? I mean, it certainly wasn't just you. It was a society that had to raise taxes, and a lot of people had to work as builders of roads and buildings, and other people were medical professionals, and still other people became academics. And then administrators got these groups together and made hospitals and schools. And you're the beneficiary of all that civilization.
No, it was all me. I had a friend one time tell me
I built that.
Yeah, it was like I said something about his business, and he freaked out on me, and he's like, it was all me. I did it all. It was all me. It was brain power, know-how, blah, blah, blah. Like,
right. I built the car that drove me to work today. I'm the one who made the shoes that I'm wearing. I weave the fabric I wear on my back.
So it's a collective. It's
well, you hope so. I mean, because if our society isn't working together that way, there are other societies that are joining together out there in the world that will be planning on eating our collective lunch pretty soon, because any group of humans is far more powerful and productive than a single individual. You hearing me, Elon?
Let me shift over to some dating quotes from this thing. She's Aaliyah, Carla Aaliyah, who we talked about in the beginning. She says, I see the dating scene and relationships as a business because it is. A lot of people don't like to admit that relationships are transactional, but they are. So it's kind of like,
why didn't you ask her where she did her research?
Well, she probably listened to this podcast and did everything the opposite of what we talk about.
Right. Kind of. Yeah, it sounds like it. So everything is transactional and nobody really loves you for who you are. It's for what you can give them. And so they're willing to trade their attractiveness, their sexuality, and their attention in exchange for cold, hard cash.
Yeah.
And I have to run up the white flag and say, no, thanks. I'm just not interested. It's not intriguing to me. I'd much rather go for that coffee with a thoughtful woman who, at the very least, if not in love with me, at least was interested in getting to know me.
Yeah.
And I would be interested in getting to know her, or I wouldn't be offering that very delicious, piping hot cup of coffee. So, because to me, it's really not about exchanging stuff. It's people are valuable in and of themselves.
Again, says you. Let me.
God, you're going dark today.
I'm going dark today. One thing, though, that I thought was interesting in that statement that I just read, she says she sees the dating scene and relationships as a business. And one thing that you talk about, you don't say relationships are a business, but you say treat marriage like a corporation, kind of.
Well, yeah, that's a metaphor.
But a metaphor. But it's kind of.
She says treat it like a business because it is a business. Yeah. I would say, well, let's look at a corporation, and only the product this corporation is producing is called happiness.
Yeah, this is because I really like that thing that I think that, but some people even will take that thing that you say about the corporation and then be like, it's not a business. Like I've seen someone say that before and like something I posted or something like that.
Oh, it's not a business. Yeah, I've heard people say, and marriage is not a contract. When actually, when you go to court, you'll find out that yes, it is. Yeah, it absolutely is. If you get legally married, you have a legal contract. So the metaphor I use, in terms of,
and this is about like a relationship or marriage, and
if we're including, let's say, a marriage with or without children, the executive subsystem of the organization is mom and dad. And it is their job ultimately to make some executive decisions like vaxxing, yes or no, or working, yes or no, feeding the children, yes or no. But if we have a competent, a minimally competent executive subsystem in the family system, they are like the board of directors, and they can treat arguments like a board of directors where none of this is personal. If I like this, if we're decorating the house and I like this rug and she likes that rug and we can't agree and we're bickering, to realize, okay, well, maybe we don't get either rug, but let's keep looking for another solution, because we can probably, if we can put a man on the moon, we can probably solve for the problem of a needed rug. It's not that complicated. It's not that hard. But the problem isn't that she's being stubborn or he just has terrible taste. The problem is our inability to work together as a team. So in the board room, I don't like to get into arguments that are all emotional, because then we're sort of blinded to a more thoughtful approach. So if somebody, like, say, someone I'm married to is upset with me, and I don't have time for a quality conflict or confrontation, I always try to reschedule into the weekend when I might have more time. And on the weekend, a day or two has passed, we're calmer, we're both ready to problem solve. Well, what about this? Would this work for you if we did this? And, well, yeah, I think it would, but let's just try it for 30 days and see if it works for both of us. Okay, let's do it. I mean, it's just, and I've been accused by some of my clients over the years of, well, but that's not real. or that's not love, because if you really love, you'd be mad about something like that. And I think, no, I can really love my wife without screaming and yelling, and I can really care about something without screaming and yelling. So it's just a problem outside of that sacred bubble that encloses her and me. And then, I'm if I'm anything in terms of theoretical orientation and counseling, I'm an Adlerian. And I think
what? An Adlerian?
Yeah. We'll talk on something for another day, but based on the work of Alfred Adler, his very thoughtful approach a century ago into psychotherapy. And he saw children as evolving and growing into adults, and that they too needed to learn how to make good decisions, because you can't just hit 18 or 21 and say, okay, you're on your own. We've controlled you every day of your life up until now, but from now on, it's all you. Because that would mean children have never had a chance to practice good decision making. And I would include managing love intelligently, because I think children need to have opportunities to converse for sure with the opposite sex or the same sex, because I don't judge, but to be able to have social time with the opposite sex, to be able to date, and to be able to date in terms of getting to know you, not necessarily in terms of courting you for a committed relationship. So if we fail to allow our children to do that and then say, okay, you're out of high school now, good luck figuring this out. I think it ill serves young people to just be completely left unled and untutored in the ways of love.
Let me, that was great. I want to go a little more into the article when we still have some time left.
You're kind of attracted to these women, aren't you? The really harsh gold digger types.
Yeah. They won't be happy though, because I don't have that much gold for them. Well, this was a thing that I found interesting too. It kind of shifted the article for me. So then she says, who is this? Aaliyah, the woman
the horrible woman who started this.
She says, in quotes, "It's going to sound like putting people into gender roles, but whatever. I think that at least the women I help, we're waking up and seeing that we have been in survival mode this entire time. Our nervous system is wrecked from having to do so many things all at once, just trying to survive and pay our own bills."
Well, although I have agreed with Aaliyah on nothing, I can at least agree that she and the women who think like her and have experienced life as she has are in fact miserable. I think, but I don't think the misery came from some recent decisions that they made. I think it's really, they're looking at their failures in love and blaming the failure to make it into a transactional business.
Yeah, but they're also saying here, it sounds like that they're blaming, they can't survive, they're saying. So they can't pay their bills. So it's like, that's a whole thing that a lot of older people like say, oh, millennials, they can't hack it, they're weak, this and that. And it's kind of putting themselves in a victim mentality.
When they get to that sort of extreme misery, though, economically, it's generally not because they were incompetent at taking care of themselves. If they had merely been taking care of themselves, they probably would have been doing fairly well, in America at least. But when we think about, the single mom who's got 3 kids and is struggling to, go to work every day and to pay for her children's expenses, and there's no man on the scene, and the father is AWOL and he's not paying child support and all of that, that to me is a failure in love. That's a failure in choices. And it's because they were making choices that were really disadvantageous. And now now that they see the reality, the whole cold, hard reality of life and what poverty feels like, their remedy is, I need to make it into a business. And I don't think that's the right diagnosis or the right prognosis. I think it ultimately is not going to work. But many, many people have done that, right? So I get it. I get that people do it. I just don't think ultimately it results in true satisfaction or happiness.
Yeah, I don't. And then they go on to say like this movement echoes the traditional wife,
The so-called trad wife.
yeah, trad wife, as the internet has coined it. Lifestyles that have drawn renewed intrigue and criticism. Um, yeah, women committing themselves to housework and child rearing while being subservient to their husbands.
Yeah, I I think the so-called trad wife there could be embraced. A woman could embrace traditional roles like out of the 50s
Mm-hmm.
without necessarily being subservient. I think she could still be a fully fledged partner in the family endeavor.
Mm-hmm.
And I think and I'm glad to see that there's tolerance and acceptance of that choice. At the same time, I think we have a growing tolerance, and studies have indicated that I'm correct on this, that with being more open to men who are not embracing traditional roles, but instead are staying home because their wives are the ones with the college degree and the great career, and they're making more money. And it's just life is easier if he just steps away from what he was doing and takes care of the kids in the home. So why not? I mean, humans doing what they do best, adapting,
Mm-hmm.
no matter what the challenges are. Unfortunately, the weird thing is, I think, and I hope listeners will buy into this idea. Procrustes, I've talked about him before.
The bed.
Yes, the bed. So Procrustes was a robber baron who had his men bring every unfortunate traveler through his land to his castle. And there, everyone was forced to spend at least one night in Procrustes' bed, which was made of iron. Iron symbolically indicating that it was unyielding and rigid. A lot like certain people. So and certain beliefs, right? Certain belief systems. So if someone was too long for the bed, the lower part of their legs would be cut off so that they could fit the bed. And if they were too short to fit the bed, they would be put on the rack and stretched until they fit the bed. The point being that everybody had to fit the same bed.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of, I think, what Aaliyah is doing and the women who think like her, and the same with Andrew Tate. I'm glad we have a male and female version of this grotesque view of humanity, because it's they're saying that there's one rule that will work for everyone, and that's not really true. This is a horrible saying, but there are many ways to skin a cat, and so for some families, the best possible family they could have would be, her making the big bucks, or for other families, it'll be the reverse. In some families, he's by far the better cook and caregiver to the children. In other families, it'll be her. And some families will do a mix of both, buy both. And isn't that all okay? I think it's okay if people find their own way. The point being, though, in all that flexibility that I'm talking about, there's an allowance for each human to be uniquely themselves, and for the diversity of the human race, which is a fact of life, not a cultural error as perceived by certain politicians. We are a diverse species, and why would we not have different answers for different people? So it makes sense to me, and I would be open to doing a 180 on my family structure tomorrow if circumstances changed in such a way that it favored that kind of adaptation.
Yeah. There's another thing I'd like to get at too. I thought was interesting because the article also explained like just being fully reliant on a man, like financially, and they came up with a solution to that. So
I remember
the solution
reading the article.
said so some of these people who are promoting this sort of thing said they're careful not to become fully reliant on a man just because he's covering all the bills. Instead, they said it's important for women to either build a separate income stream in their spare time or to save and invest their allowances. So Yeah, I thought that
Yeah.
was funny. Like, just because if they get a normal job, then it's like then they're just back to square one.
His money is our money, and my money is my
It's my
money.
money. Yeah.
So
Is that
that
good?
makes no sense whatsoever to me in terms of a relationship based on equality, which again, I think is the foundation for having true love that can endure the test of time. I think that it is important for women to be protected. I think it's important for everybody to be protected. And I've seen many families not take advantage of the current laws that provide for living trusts. I don't appreciate wills so much, but also insurance, investments. I mean, we're living in America, one of the richest countries on the planet. And human beings who don't take these things into account are putting their families at risk because people die all the time. And I would urge everybody to game out the possibilities, the things that can go wrong. It's not such a big deal when we're in our 20s or young 30s, but to start talking about it, it's never too soon, I think, to start talking about it. And well, what would happen if you died? Well, what would happen if I died? And what would, what about money? What would we do then? And I think solutions like investing, life insurance, living trusts, and possible career alterations, I think those are all important to consider.
I want to read you a quote by another woman along that same line, Abigail CSIU. She says in regards to that too, I think the major misconception is that people think, oh, if you're getting provided for, it means you're financially dependent on your man. This is so untrue. Being provided for means you have more resources because you get to keep all your money and you can invest them. That's actually making you financially more independent if anything happens.
Yeah, you get to keep all your money. And I think the earlier quote was referring to her allowances.
Yeah.
And but that kind of ignores the idea that once married, who's in charge of her allowance?
She is.
I don't know if that's true. I think, if he's the guy who's the rigid control freak and he doesn't like the service he's getting, he gets to cut back on wages.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's a transaction. It is a business after all. And it makes, again, no sense to me whatsoever that we're talking like this about real people living a real life. And sadly, I see it as a giant step backwards for women, infantilizing women by superficially empowering them as predators, but in fact, no, turning the whole marriage game into a predacious bloodfest so that whoever's on top wins in that moment. And if the other person doesn't like it, then they can hit the road because they are losers with a capital L.
Well, I think that's a great spot to end. So wrap it up there. It's a fascinating idea. I could write a fun short story about that.
I think you could. I do want to end on that note, but I just think, as boring as it might sound, two people in love in a relationship that's abuse-free based on equality is going to beat any of these other models hands down over time in terms of the production of the most important element of any relationship, and that's happiness.
Man, you heard it there. So, so here we go. To wrap things up, we have a listener question. And if you have a question for Steve, you could visit stevening.com and fill out the contact form. And here's this week's question. Starts with my boyfriend. So maybe.
I didn't know you had a. Wait a minute, what?
No, this is the question. My boyfriend has a great sense of humor, and it's one of the many things I love about him. But he often cracks jokes when conversations start to get deep or serious. At first, I just rolled with it because we were a new couple and having fun. But now I'm seeing that he does this to avoid sharing his feelings, and it's getting annoying. What advice do you have about this?
Ooh, that's a tough one, advice giving, because like I said earlier in our podcast, humans are a diverse group and we do different things for different reasons, or we do the same things, I should say, for different reasons. So if 10 men or 10 women who have had adulterous affairs, you might have 10 different reasons for that. In general, though, what I think she's talking about is compulsive humor, where I make a joke every time I get uncomfortable and I'm incapable of having a serious conversation about certain topics. In this case, it's feelings.
Yeah.
And that's consistent with the phenomenon of early childhood trauma. And I think just gently and lovingly confronting someone about that and letting them know that you're on their side and you really want them to get some help. And the help that's out there is quite wonderful. There's a lot of therapy for that, including EMDR, eye movement desensitization response, which I've talked to patients who've used that with other therapists and they found it very helpful. Talk therapy. There's a lot of work that could be around dysfunctional family structure and where did I learn how to make jokes all the time, and taking a look at why it's compulsive, and then asking oneself, do I feel safe now? Could I say, and if I were talking to him, I might suggest a homework assignment where if he is interested in overcoming this, and I've seen men and women with this problem, that they could begin charting their feelings 3 times a day, simply listing their feelings. That's it. Listing their feelings 3 times a day, and only for 30 days. And just creating an increased level of awareness of one's feelings can highlight the limitation I'm putting on my feelings. If after 30 days, I look at what I've charted and I've only got like 3 feelings. I'm happy and okay and fine.
Aren't those the only 3 feelings?
Yeah, for some people that would be a month of feelings. I'm happy, okay, and I'm fine.
That's my joke. You didn't get it.
No, I'm sorry. So I'm concentrating here. So, and I have a problem with taking myself way too seriously. So, and for some people that's an eye opener, and it's like, oh, I need to really take a look at that. And I think a therapist can accelerate that growth process and do a really good job of it, like giving someone permission to feel anger and what's involved in that and why is that so different from being abusive. Because I think for a lot of us, like myself, anger equaled abuse. And of course it doesn't. One can share the statement, I feel really angry right now with the way you're talking to me. And that's not abusive. Although I was taught it was abusive in my family.
Yeah. I really like that idea of that list. Is that something you do at the end of the day where you chart your feelings, or like how does...
A detail question. The details are important. So I encourage my clients who need this assignment to do it 3 times a day upon arising, whatever time of the day that is, according to their own schedule. And somewhere halfway through the day, typically we think of lunch being that time, and sometime before retiring for the evening, so that they can just write down those feelings, and feelings only with no explanation. Yeah. That's all we're looking for. Not that my boss was abusive, or I didn't win the lottery, or I did win the lottery, but just to put the feelings down, because we're just taking a simple inventory of the range of feelings you have in your own storehouse of feelings.
And then after the 30 days, and then you do compare them. What if you're like, wow, I have a lot of feelings? And then, you stop telling jokes.
Yeah, you put that in front of your girlfriend and you say, hey, what's up? Get over yourself. No, I think, then it's a relationship issue where I have a lot of feelings, but perhaps I'm not sharing them. But generally speaking, most people aren't sharing their feelings because they don't know what they're feeling.
Okay.
And charting your feelings can really help you get to know them. There's also, and I'll encourage everybody who's going to do this assignment at home to go to the internet and just enter a search for lists of feelings. There are so many options out there, but usually it's a full page, and they typically are going to be organized in categories like feelings related to anger, sadness, happiness, and fear.
Fear, yeah.
And those 4. And I was joking earlier when I said okay and fine, because those are not feelings. And I've had other people share BS, and what I mean by those initials are body sensations. I'm just feeling really hungry. I'm just really, really hungry. No, but I mean, emotionally, how are you feeling? Well, I'm thirsty and tired too. And those are only body sensations. Those are not really feelings one shares to promote emotional intimacy.
Great. Well, thank you for that question. And thanks for the conversation, Steve. It was fun as always.
You didn't make it sound fun. I mean, it sounded like it's fun as always.
It was a blast. All right. Thanks, everyone, for listening. We'll catch you later.
Next time.